this. I was called to make a difference, to have that ripple effect of every client that I help gets to bloom and shine their light. And as they do that, and as they get more confident and they go out and do the thing they're meant to do, that has a ripple effect. So helping one person, it goes out further into the world. And I know you know this.
Amie Sponza is an actor, producer, filmmaker, and the president of Northeast Stage, a nonprofit theater company. She dares people to dream, to create their best life. Amie left her family's marina business to chase her dream of working in the performing arts, where she built an impressive resume. Today, as a coach at Act Now Life Coaching, she's directing others to write and perform in their own life play. What have you always dreamed of? Have you pursued it? What's held you back? Join us for a discussion about defining and creating your greatest dream. Welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, tell us your story.
Sure, Pat. Thanks for having me today. My story. Well, there's a few. You don't get to this point in life without a few stories. But I will share how I ended up as a coach. I have I come from a family business. I'm third generation in a marina business, and it's supported me and my family over the years. Um, in many ways, and it was a safe and convenient way to be doing that. My love, of course, was from very early on performing, being an actor in theater and film, and I missed it, so I went back to it after my daughter graduated from high school and my son was old enough, and so I was doing that, and then the pandemic happened and everything shut down, so I was back to only, you know, showing up at work at the marina. And my brother came to me and he said, let's meet at mom's. And so we're sitting there in her living room, and he said, it's obvious that you're unhappy. It's like the light has gone out in your eyes, and it's affecting the people around you. Now, I had no idea that how I was feeling was that obvious to anybody, you know? I guess I'm not that good of an actor unless I'm focused on it, right? Anyway, I hadn't really thought about, gone deep about why was I unhappy. So he said, I really think you should just take the time. And God bless my brother, that he cares about me enough to say, take some time, go figure it out, find what, because he'd seen me in my joy making a short film or doing theater. And he knows what I look like lit up, with my sparkle, as it says over here. So I went looking and I found a program, a 3-month program that I went through. And while I was on this journey, I wrote in my in my journal one morning, I would love to be invited to be in a short film, shooting in my local area, working with like-minded creative people and being part of the creative process. Having done some short film challenges, I knew what that was like, and it was fun. And with everything shut down, that was just pie in the sky. So then I took my dog for a walk, and while I was on my walk, I ran into another dog walker, and we started talking, and it turned out he was in the business, and I thought, oh, maybe this is something. But turned out to be, that was it. But while I was talking to him, I got a phone call, and I didn't take it. So then I thought, well, I better call him back. And it was a friend from high school, and he said, Hey, Amy, I've written a short film. I'm here with the director today. We really want to talk to you because we want you to be in it. Can you meet with us? I was like, what?
Wow.
You gotta be kidding me. I just wrote about this in my journal this morning. He goes, well, I guess it's meant to be. So I did meet with them. They told me the story of his film, The Clown Affair. Um, and I liked the idea of it and the role he was offering me. And because I have a theater company, I also was able to help them with some casting of some of the roles they were looking for. And I provided two locations, my home and my mom's home, for them to do their shoot. So I got to be in it and part of the creative process. And that film went on to be in film festivals and won some awards. He won an award for his role in The Clown Affair. So it was like, wow, if this can work for me, it can work for other people. And I love helping other people. So I decided, you know what? I am going to get myself trained to do this because I want to help other people do what I was able to do. And so I went through the training process and got certified, and that's what I'm doing. And I love it. I really do.
Do you have any sort of explanation for the remarkable serendipity of these events? I mean, it's a great story.
Thank you. Yeah. No, and that's not the first time something like that has happened to me. And that's not the first time I went through a coaching program either. I had a coach in 2018, 20 2018, 2019, before everything shut down. And when I was in a group program, I shared that I wanted to, it had been on my mind for a long time to do some sort of documentary about my mentor. Peg Murray won the Tony Award for Cabaret in 1967 with Joel Grey.
Mhm.
And I met her when I was 16, and I was starstruck because she was on one of my favorite soap operas at the time, All My Children. So I was like, and then I started learning who she was because I had no idea who she was when I met her other than this soap opera. And she has an incredible story. And I thought, well, I had been talking about it for a while, and somebody said to me, don't waste time. She's in her 90s. You better get it done. And she was living in an assisted living place at first in her own apartment, and then she suffered a stroke and was in the nursing part of it after that with rehabilitation. And so I thought, I really want to get this done while she's here so I can get the stories right from her. So I shared that desire to do that in this group of women. And this woman said, I know a documentary filmmaker. Do you want me to introduce you to? I was like, really? Yeah, that would be great. And so I got email introduced first, and then we set up a meeting to meet in New York in the city. And we had lunch, and I told her Peg's story, and she was fascinated. And she said, yes, I would love to do this for you. And this woman had done documentaries for PBS. I mean, she was a big deal.
Yeah.
And then she told me her fee to do it. And I was like, okay, that's more than I have to do this. So let's see. I've raised money for my theater company, which started because of my mentor, Peg. So I said, I believe there are enough people who want to know her story that are associated with my theater company that I can raise the money. So I'm going to say yes and give you a deposit and let's do this thing.
Oh, that's gutsy.
Yeah. So I did it, and I did a Facebook fundraiser because my theater company is a nonprofit. They were donating through the theater company to see this happen, and I raised almost all of it. Some of it I put up myself, And over my birthday weekend in October of 2019, we recorded her in an afternoon. She had her hair and makeup done, and we set up her room with all of her photos from Broadway shows and we made her feel the glamorous person that she always was to me. And this woman at 95, when we recorded her, so full of life, even having had a stroke, just so engaging. So we got it in the can and it was ready to show her by her birthday, February 14th of 2020. She turned 96, and a group of her friends were there, and some of the residents in the place where she lived, and the nurses, and everyone just loved it. And then in March everything shut down.
That's right.
And and then we didn't have access to go and visit her because it wasn't safe to go expose the residents to what's out in the world with COVID being so prevalent. And in November, she passed away. So I got it in under the wire, and I called it Peg Murray Inspiration because she was an inspiration to me, and I hope that her story will inspire others.
I think inspiring stories touch us all because there's something within each of us that wants to always take, I think, I'll see within many of us that want to take that next step, whatever it is.
Hmm.
And part of the key is figuring out what is holding you back.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, the stories we tell ourselves often, are to our detriment. You must run into this in coaching.
Oh yeah. 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 We all have them, and that's why coaches have coaches, because you can't see the picture when you're in the frame.
That's so true. That is so true.
No,
But
I experience it myself. So I hear myself saying things to my clients that I need to follow my own advice.
to what degree does having a background in performing arts influence your idea of the possibilities that are out there for yourself and everybody?
Um, well, I think, you know, we all have a unique voice. And what resonates for me is going to be different than what resonates for you. So I believe that there is no competition out there. We're all going to appeal to different people. But I think having the background in the theater and in creative arts, it allows me the freedom. I mean, we all have the freedom to use our imaginations. I'm just more practiced at it, you know. If stepping into someone else's shoes and taking on the identity of another being, you know, pretending, if you will, put on this hat, put on this costume, be the try on the costume of being the person that you want to emulate. You know, you want to emulate um, Meryl Streep. You know, what would Meryl Streep do, right? If you want to be Sean Connery, how would you walk? You know, what would you say? Um, and that could be, you know, whoever inspires you or whoever you look up to. If that's going to help move you in the direction of where you want to go, I say go for it. Put on the costume. If you want to sparkle, you know, get yourself a tiara or wear some sparkly earrings. You know, it's hard to see with my background, but you know, you want to it's a tool in the toolbox for coaching, I think, is to encourage people to do that, to try it on.
Well, I also think on a deeper level, influences the way your brain works. I mean, it's a neurotraining, if you will, for your brain.
Yeah.
And the more you get into that, you know, they always say synapses that fire together, wire together.
Right.
I think there's a lot of truth in that. And seeing yourself in that future self of you that you're projecting, I think is a really effective tool in terms of moving you through.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we train our, but when someone says, "Oh, you're brainwashed," well, yeah, we all are. From the time we're infants,
Oh,
we're
so
being
true.
we're being trained.
No, I often say we spend the first half of our lives having all this crap heaped upon us, all the societal expectations, the brainwashing,
Yeah,
whatever you want to call it. And if we're lucky, we get to spend the second half of our lives peeling it back to figure out who we really are and where we really want to go.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's why I like to say, second act success story or strategy, that's your sass, and get your sparkle back in your second act. That's what I went to do. I went to find my sparkle again, get the light back in my eyes. And so many, especially women, we're raised to be the caretaker, the mom,
Yeah.
the wife, the mother. And then when the kids grow up and they're gone, and many are like, well, what do I do now? Who am I without being I mean, we never stop being a mother, obviously, but who else am I? Who was I before? And who do I want to become next? What is calling me? What's the legacy I want to leave besides having raised my children, and if you're not someone who has had children, maybe you're stuck in a job that doesn't fulfill you. You're doing it just to pay the bills, kind of like I mean, I love my family and the family business. I'm proud of everything that we've accomplished, and there was a certain pull there. However, it's not what lit me up. Many it was like, well, why aren't you running the marina? Because I didn't want to. Yes, if I wanted to, I could have said, no, I'm the oldest, and yes, I'm a woman, but I'm going to do this. But it wasn't what I wanted. I had this pull of something more. Something else was calling me, and I believe it was this. I was called to make a difference, to have that ripple effect of every client that I help gets to bloom and shine their light. And as they do that, and as they get more confident and they go out and do the thing they're meant to do, that has a ripple effect. So helping one person, it goes out further into the world. And I know you know this.
Oh, I think it's very true. And we often don't know where those ripples go. You
Yeah.
just have to trust that they go to good places and they have good effects.
Yes.
Now, I have to ask you, I'm not sure if when we talked previously, if we talked about this, where did the word sparkle come from?
Well, you mean for me
Well,
or
yeah, well, I don't, I had an interesting interface, if you will, with the word sparkle recently. Okay. I have moved from Arizona up to Idaho. Okay. And when I was still in Arizona, the word sparkle came to me. And it's not a word that I would normally use.
yeah.
And I thought, "Oh, that's really kind of interesting," and I just tucked it away. Well, I was up here on a trip, house hunting, and I stopped at a little place for breakfast. And I went to pay the bill, and on top of the bill, my server's name was Sparkle.
Oh, that's great.
And I thought, "Oh, is the universe trying to tell me something? I'm on the right path," because
Yeah.
it's a major move. I didn't know anybody.
Mhm.
The sort of thing I've done numerous times before, but every time it still has its elements of being daunting.
Yeah.
So your word sparkle just catches me.
Yeah. I mean, when you think of the lights on Broadway and being a star and stars sparkle, and so it just resonates with me. sparkle. Your
Did you
second,
no,
yeah.
did you ever see yourself as a coach when you were younger?
Um, I don't know about that, but being the oldest of five, I've always kind of been a leader. The wanting to be first, being the head of the line, leading the way. I directed 16 high school musicals after college when I came home after living in New York for 5 years, got engaged and married and found myself at home again and thought, what can I do with to make a difference? And I ended up, replacing somebody who was going to direct, and I was going to assist. And they said, well, he can't do it. Will you do it? I said, well, yeah, sure. Having never done it before and having gotten a C in directing in college, because I would rather be on stage. But the confidence I got from watching Peg Murray direct me and others, I I I did it, and then I ended up doing it for 16 years while my kids were growing up. And so I think there's a lot of coaching, especially with young people when you're directing,
Oh, yeah, I would think so.
So it's sort of a similar thing.
It's sort of a natural evolution when you move, I guess, from being the coached person to the coach.
Yeah,
And then really just extending that into a wider realm.
right. Exactly. And I sort of always was drawn to, that when I look at the books that I collected over the years, they all sort of go together. I was always interested in this field. I did take psychology in college. So, and reading, Wayne Dyer and Louise Hay and um, Dr. Joe Dispenza and all. So many things have like come together to go, oh, this is all this experience and knowledge has come together and led me here.
The accumulation of that kind of knowledge is so highly individual, and yet you want to pass it along to others. How do you do that?
Um, I think it just comes as it's needed. You kind of pull out during a conversation. If you hear what someone is saying, oh, this fits. And you
Yeah.
pull out that tool out of the toolbox, you know. Um, I think it's just an organic thing,
No,
knowing.
I just find it fascinating because I think there's so much wisdom out there, and there's wisdom among all of us.
Sure.
And I'm really fascinated by how do we pass that along? And I know there's no neat, easy answer to it. And I think coaching is a really vital part of helping people find their truth and their wisdom. And hopefully, in that ripple effect, they will pass that along to others.
Hmm.
Um, but the process of finding our truth, I think it's ongoing, but I think it really hopefully starts to hit us a little after midlife sometimes.
I think so. We're Before that, we're so focused on what society expects from us.
Oh, so true.
You
I
know,
know.
this is the path I'm supposed to take. I go to school. Some take the path of college, others take the path of a career right away, um, and some are out there just trying to discover what they're supposed to be doing. But it's that whole thought of, that came from our parents and their parents is you get married, you have a job, you raise your family, and you work the same job for your whole life and you retire with the gold watch. Well, that doesn't exist anymore.
No, it doesn't.
No, the young people today are, they're trying jobs on. They're job hopping and they're figuring out what if they're not happy, they're moving on. They're moving on. And there's something to be said for that, because why stay somewhere where you're unhappy? You're spending so many hours of your life doing a job, more than you are at home in many cases, awake. I mean, you might be home, but most of that time you're sleeping or making a meal. But so many hours of our week, if we're working a 40-hour week, are spent at work. So we might as well love what we do,
I
or at least like it or be inspired by it.
And wherever we are, we need to learn whatever skills are available there because we'll bring them forward. And I
Exactly.
think I think today there's so many interesting things going on that didn't exist, at least when I was younger.
Mhm.
We lived in a much more, or I lived in a much more siloed life.
Yeah.
Um, and today, with all the media and the distribution and the creativity that can go into that,
Yeah.
there are endless possibilities for what you can decide to do.
Yeah.
And I think that if you can stick it out for 10 or 15 years and get the skills that you need,
Mhm.
the world is really yours.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and I think if you're really following what you're inspired by, and especially because many of us, I know you asked me that question about, did I feel like I was a coach when I was younger, because many times what we innately love as children is what we end up
So
doing.
true. Yes. I wanted I everybody thought I would write as a kid. What am I doing now? I'm writing.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, no, my son loved puzzles as and Legos as a kid, and he's studying engineering. My nephew, who the same, and he's an architect. So it's interesting. But sometimes we get jumbled up in the middle, and we might wonder, well, how did I end up here? But as you say, a lot of times we're drawn into something because there's something we need to learn there. And even if the experience that we're going through isn't pleasant and we wouldn't wish it on our worst enemy, it's important to find the gift. What am I learning? Get the gift. I'm not going to go through this experience without getting the gift. And the idea is to look for it. What is this here to teach me?
I totally agree. My daily mantra is what can I learn
Yeah.
from all things big and small? And it really boils down to what do I learn about myself?
Mhm.
And I think that self-knowledge is the most valuable thing you can have because that it's true guidance. It's not influenced by these outside pushes and pulls.
Yeah.
And I think to the extent we can be true to ourselves, we'll live an interesting life.
Yeah. Amen to that.
Yeah, or life interesting to us at least.
Yeah. Well, I also like to let my clients know that I'm not there to tell them what to do. I am their partner in believing in them when they're having a hard time believing in themselves. Because most times we know what the answer is. We know inside, internally, our inner self, our larger self knows the answer. And it's a matter of drawing it out of them and holding up a mirror. This is what I heard you say. Does that resonate with you? What when you hear yourself saying this, what does that tell you? To reflect back to them so they can find the answer from within, because we are each our own expert, you know, on ourselves. That inner knowledge. And when people are thinking about, is this investment, and I call it an investment, is this investment worth my time and energy and money? Because when you invest in a car, the minute you take that car off the lot, it depreciates.
Hmm.
When you invest in yourself and grow and self-development, that is never lost. You take that with you forever.
And I would say it just grows and builds upon itself over time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
What more could you ask for?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm still using tools that I learned from former coaches and um and the training that I received. I go back to it over and over again. It's like, why am I here again? Oh yeah, I forgot. I fell out of practice of this, you know?
Our experiences tend to spiral, I find. Until we learn that lesson, as you were saying earlier, we
Yeah.
revisit an iteration of that lesson.
Yeah.
And until we resolve it, it will keep cropping up.
Yes. Sometimes it's a tap, it's a
Yeah.
little nudge or a whisper, and then it'll raise its voice or hit harder. And eventually, if you don't listen, it knocks you over the head and starts hollering. And that's when dis-ease shows up, right?
Absolutely. And I think that if you can, as you go through these, as you proceed through life, if you think of it as a spiral in that regard, and you keep asking yourself, what can I learn?
Yeah.
When the lessons appear, you're ready to be you're more ready to be a student.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because if you're not ready for that, man, you're just going to keep running into that lesson again and again until
That's
finally, it just, as you say, just slaps you up the head side and you realize I need to attend to this.
yeah, absolutely. And I know you've got your story, your bump in the road, and
Which
our
one?
no, right? Which bump in the road did you finally listen to? What hit you over the head, Pat?
Well, actually, fairly recently in the last year, I had a really significant bump where essentially I was in a situation where somebody stabbed me in the back, twisted the knife, and pulled the rug out from underneath me.
Wow.
And in doing that, isolated me from my entire social network that I'd worked very hard to build because I was relatively new to an area.
Mhm.
And I'm really very resilient, but this knocked me hard. I mean, I just went into a real depression, which is not me at all. And I
Mm,
got some help and talked my way through it and figured it out. But what I realized in going through that was I have repeated that same set of circumstances, or I've lived through that same set of circumstances numerous times in my life with severe consequences.
mhm.
And when I finally saw that, I think I was ready to get to the bottom of it and let it go.
Yeah.
But I had to get slapped upside the head several times in a similar circumstance before I really started looking at it and saying, wait, why do I let things get to this point or how do I contribute? And actually, this particular incident wasn't that hard on me relative to some other things I've been through, but
Yeah.
emotionally, it hit me so hard because it was a lesson I had not learned.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, that's it's it. That's the cycle. That's the spiral. And right before change is constant and we're always going to be growing and life is just going to keep serving us the same dish in a different form until until we learn from it and grow, right? Because if we're not growing, we're dying.
And as soon as you master that particular lesson, there will be more to come.
Exactly. It's never one and done.
No, so you better just adopt a mindset of I'm here to learn.
Yeah, exactly. That mantra of what can I learn today is a good one. Yeah.
if if you were to leave, so many people in that general midlife area, and I would also argue a lot of people going into retirement really go through a tough time. It's such a huge change in their lives and their identity. If
Yeah.
you could just give them a few pieces of advice, what would you tell them?
Well, I like to start with the 3 Ds, and that is to uh, design your dream. What is it you would love to do? Decide you're going to go for it. Make a decision because nothing happens until you decide. And then when your fear shows up, which it will, you say, shall we dance? And dance with your fear because if we let fear take the lead, we're going to stay stuck. We can take fear along. It's going to come with us whether we like it or not. It's trying to keep us safe in the status quo. And that's its job. But we can say, "Come, let me take you for a twirl on this dance floor of life, and let's do it anyway." So, dream, design your dream, decide for your dream, and dance with your fear.